And what I lived is what I'm talking about. Talking about bullet holes and scars. Talking about 19, 20 years in prison. YA, camp, juvenile hall, San Quentin, Folsom, Soledad, Corcoran, Pelican Bay, Chino, the whole.
Where you from, fool?
Los Angeles.
What did you say your name was? What did you say your name was?
Hip Hop Justice Radio.
I'm going to tell you the story how when I came out of prison for my second incarceration, after 15 years on my second incarceration, I had $75 to my name and no job prospects or anything, $75. My oldest son picked me up from the prison, and I would tell you this, the deepest and hardest and most uncontrollable crying I've ever done in my life was the day I left prison. I cried like I have never cried in my life. And my son could not, he was like, Dad, what's wrong? You're out. And all I could think about was how there were so many of the men that I knew who were still there who deserved as much or more than me to be out. And here I am walking out the door. I had a cellmate that I left who was there for a wrongful conviction that had just not wound its way through the courts yet. And I couldn't help but be struck by the irony that here I am knowingly guilty, having premeditatedly committed the crimes for which I was in prison, and I'm walking out. And all of the ones who were there who will never get out, who had dedicated their lives to helping me become a man in prison, know what it really meant to be a father and a man by being a father to me, by being a brother to me, some of them being a son to me, teaching me these lessons. And now I'm walking out. I cried uncontrollably because I needed to. And my son hugged me because he needed to. And we drove down that highway. And when I got back home, I had a sense that I can't return to this same foolishness. Failure is not an option anymore. It's just not an option. And I had guys who told me before I left, you can't say you'll never come back. Never say never. And here's what I would say to them. And I want you to think about this because you've been incarcerated. I want you to really feel this. Do you have any children?
No.
You have any sisters and brothers?
2 sisters.
2 sisters. Here's what I asked the guy who was with me while I was incarcerated, who said to me, you can't say you'll never come back. You can never say never because anything could happen. I said, I'll never go back for a crime, committing any crime. He said, well, you can't say that. I said, here's what I'm going to ask you. Do you have any children? And you know what he said? He said, yeah. I said, do you have daughters? And I knew he had 2 daughters. I said, let me ask you this. Why are you in prison? And he was right back to the same story. I'm in prison because I was getting money. Sounding real slick. And like he said something really, flippant. I said, okay, you're in prison for getting money. Okay. Suppose I told you I'm going to give you $50 million the day that you get out. He said, $50 million? Man, you can't give me no $50 million. I said, but let's suppose it. Let's just imagine that you could have $50 million when you get out of prison. He said, okay. I said, but the cost is that you would have to molest your children, your daughter. Can you tell me that you would never do that? And it became very tense in the room. We're in the middle of the range. It became very tense. Because I had asked him something that so deeply violated his sense of his values that he now is on the brink of wanting to become violent. But I stopped him because I intervened on his thinking, understanding the nature of the situation. And I said, as surely as you are convinced that you would never rape your daughters, never molest your daughters for any amount of money, no matter how much it would be, I'm telling you, I'm that sure about never coming back to prison. no matter what trinkets are put in front of me. And until you get to a place where failure is not an option, where going back to prison for no amount of cars, clothes, jewelry, money, anything that you can imagine that would be put in front of you, until you get to that place, you've not yet matured to the spiritual level of strength that you need to face the challenges that are out here. So I'm going to say to you, as an older brother to a younger brother, as a father to a son, don't ever, ever, ever believe that anything out here is worth more than your freedom. And I'm not talking about freedom as in jail or out of jail. I'm talking about the freedom of your soul to be well, for you to be in a place where you can look in the mirror and say, you know what? I love me. And I love me so much that I'm able to feel connected and to love others. That's how I've stayed out. That's how I've endured the streets. That's how I've overcome the temptation to go back out there and sell some drugs and get high and do all those things. You understand me?
What's your name, boy?
Dr. Scott Washington.
Where you from, fool?
Los Angeles.
Excuse me, ma'am. I'm not supposed to pass items to convicts.
Si no están listos.